Toxic masculinity, what does that mean? We probably never heard anybody say anything like, well, he objectifies women, therefore I feel like he's a real man. Nobody says that. But instead of saying objectifying women, what are some of the things that we hear in the community where we're talking about, oh, he's a real one because he objectifies women? He's a pimp, he's a player, he got hoes, he got bitches, right?
Richard's 26. When he was a teenager, he robbed a couple of drugstores at gunpoint, and he's been incarcerated for the past 6.5 years.
I was like a weird, artsy kid, and that was cool with me in elementary school. But when I got to middle school, my peers had bought into this idea of this is what it is to be a black man, and it was hyper violent, hyper masculine, and immediately I picked up on the fact that that's how I was supposed to be.
In prison, he started this group called Success Stories, all about getting guys to question what it means to be a man.
In toxic masculinity, you become a real man by doing 3 things. Athletic skills, by dominating in that sense, by objectifying women, and by having money. Even the athletic part is really what Manny Thomas was talking about. It really comes down to violence. Showing up to court and they're like, you're fighting 150 years to life, just feeling like, I remember my homie literally passed out and I caught him and just feeling like, whoa, they're trying to take my life away, this is real.
Tell me about how you first started reading up on different feminist texts.
I was in this class, they put all the kids who were doing bad in school, all the 9th graders who were doing bad in the same track of classes. They came into our science class and started explaining the school to prison pipeline, and he said, do you know that you guys sitting in here have a higher chance of going to prison than going to college? And I started paying attention because I knew something about what they were talking about rang true for me. And they basically had a program where they were taking these at-risk kids and getting them involved in community organizing. But just being in that organizing world, those kind of conversations were happening all the time. But that was the first time it was explicitly explained to me, and they used texts that Bell Hooks had written. I was such a chameleon, it was really fake. I would be super Feminista Jones, and then when I would be around my homies, I was using the B word and all of that. When we get to prison, you either dive deeper into the madness or you revert back to whatever you knew to be right before you got into the madness. And for me, it was I ran back to the movement and organizing, and I knew this world over here, and I knew it was right, and it was my values, and I started reading up on it, doing a lot of reading. I started seeing how we we as men were really destroying ourselves on some patriarchal stuff, and so it's imagine you're reading this stuff and you lower the book and you're seeing it, and you're seeing real violence, people getting stabbed, people getting beat up, people getting shot, and you're just we don't gotta live like this, y'all, but being too scared to say it.
According to the FBI, 90% of homicides are committed by men.
But this way of living and this way of thinking escalated all the way to the point to where I objectified another human being at the point of taking his life.
Men are twice as likely as women to abuse or become dependent on drugs and alcohol.
That addiction that I got in an early stage of my life carried with me everywhere I went, and wherever I go, there I was.
And men are nearly 4 times as likely to die by suicide, according to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the CDC.
So we're not just acting like this for no reason. Why do we buy into this? What are some of the payoffs we get for buying into toxic masculinity?
You get to be the boss.
Okay, you get to be the boss.
Glory.
Reputation.
Somebody said acceptance, self-esteem. I'm gonna say pride too, because that's a good one. Now, what are the costs, the long-term costs of buying into this? Life sentence.
Life sentence.
Death.
Unsatisfied.
Loneliness.
So just based on seeing it up here, I feel like it's an obvious question, but do the payoffs seem like they're worth the cost? Absolutely not. And yet we do it all the time.
Richard was conscious of gender stereotypes at a young age, and his wife Taina, who he met as a teenager before he was arrested, she's a big source of support, and they talk a lot.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
What's up, love?
Hey, baby. How you doing?
I was asked, what do you think of the work, the patriarchy work that we do in Success Stories? And I was talking about how you really inform our work and the experiences you have. We wouldn't talk about street harassment in Success Stories if it wasn't for you. We wouldn't even know what that is.
Oh no, they would know what it is.
We wouldn't know the words. People actually push back against that language. They're like, it's not harassment, it's a compliment.
Yeah, a compliment without consent is harassment.
That's a good one. See, I'm about to say that in the next patriarchy. So when we're objectifying a woman, or we're looking at a woman in a sexual way, making sexual comments, breaking our neck, whatever, and not giving a fuck about what she thinks or feels, seeing her as a thing rather than a person, we're contributing to rape culture. So we might not actually be raping, but we're making the first step, which is I can look at you in a sexual way whether you like it or not, which is like that kind of patriarchal entitlement. And when we create that culture, that's ultimately how rape happens. So like my hero right here, Malala Yousafzai, and Beyonce, and like this card that my wife sent me that says we're gonna win, which is like our thing, it's like our phrase, it's what we say.
He got arrested about 3 months after we started dating. But yeah, we had to get married in the county jail. We got married in June 2012, about a year after we started dating.
Patriarchy teaches men not to be vulnerable, not to ask for help, which was the situation with Richard. When he lost his job and decided to commit the robbery, I told him I would have lent him the money for his rent. He knew that. But I think that patriarchy instructed him not to reach out for help. And he didn't. He decided that he was gonna get it on his own, and that decision led him to be where he is. It would be really incredible to see, a man stepping up in such a serious way to battle patriarchy just in general. But to see that happen in a prison, the most hyper violent, toxic, masculine place, is just nothing short of a miracle.
Are you a feminist?
Yes. Heck yeah. I think it's important that men talk about feminism explicitly, talk about patriarchy explicitly, and identify as feminists. And we haven't gone so far in success stories to be like, you should identify as a feminist. We try to show, not tell. But we're very clear, this is feminist literature that we're reading. This is a feminist perspective. And dudes get crazy. I've had people, men, we're sensitive. We don't like being challenged, and dudes, we're not feeling it.
Who here doesn't buy into what we just said? Let's ask that question, because everybody's giving good, answers. Thank you, brother, for being honest. Tell me why.
Well, you guys are trying to teach us how to throw all this stuff out the window, but when I get out there, I'm gonna have kids, and you guys are telling me to teach them to cry, and it's okay to do this, and it's okay to do that, but yet when they go to school, kids ain't like that. I'm from Granada Hills, California, and there's a lot of white people right there, and the white people is mean sometimes, and they could be on you know what I'm saying, Benjamin? But at the end of the day, I'm on a serious note, kids are killing themselves over being bullied at school.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? So I can understand me putting this to my life because that's what I have to do in order to stay out. But teaching this to my kid, I want to know on a real note how you guys expect me to do that.
I went through a youth diversion program when I was 14, where I was taught about this stuff at 14, and by 16 I was back with the homies getting high and gangbanging. So it's a moment-to-moment thing. I could spit this shit at 14, it sounded good, but I ended up going right back to what I wanted to do, honestly.
That was something for me as a kid. I was beaten, I was molested, I was tortured, all that stuff, and I never had anywhere to go with that. And being emotionally unintelligent, I lashed out a lot to a lot of different people throughout my whole life.
As a young child feeling abused, you feel humiliated. You're terrified, especially if it's somebody within your own household or family. And there were times where it could feel like I'm less of a man because of that.
The fear is if I show you who I really am, that's not gonna be good enough and I'm gonna be ostracized. And it sounds silly, it sounds like a small fear, but it's everything.
And even when all of us went against you when it came to that patriarchal conversation, you remain firm in that. And I admire your courage. I admire everything about you, man. You're somebody that I look up to, and it's not just because you're 6'4" and I'm 5'8".
This is graduation. Richard is being transferred to a minimum security prison to serve out the last few months of his sentence, and the other guys are planning to continue this program after he leaves.
We get to choose what type of man we become in life, and it's always been our choice, and it always will be. So the question lies, what kind of man will you be?
You a heathen, you beneath them, I believe them. So I had to do what I had to do. I've been getting sense ever since, let a hustler Hustla's a man. On me.